Lord, hey God, let me get the essence of what I'm being told. So in my dream, Trump was on the stage. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, was on a stage, and as he was on this stage, he was giving a speech, and I found myself standing behind him, and he's standing up talking, and I don't know what he was saying. I just knew it was like the speeches that he gives with a lot of people, and he began to slump over. He was slumping over, somewhat to the right. It was like he was just slumping over to the right, like he was hurting in his side or stomach or something, but he looked very tired. You know, something was obviously wrong. He looked very weary. And it looked like there were some steps. It looked like he was just going to walk off. It looked like he was hurting so bad or whatever was happening to him. He kind of doubled over to the side, and his knees buckled. And it looked like, and I thought he was just going to walk right off of the stage. Like he was going to give up and say, I can't do this. And I was standing behind him watching all this, and I was certainly very concerned. And I remember thinking, man, I hope he's not going to just walk out here and die and give up and stop. You know, there were two men on each side of him, these two men. And I'm going to just tell you up front, and I'm not going to try to interpret just a whole lot of this, but there were two men, and these two men, in the dream, I knew they weren't just human. They were very tall, their clothes, and I've had experiences with angels, and one thing I take away from when I've had angel encounters, real ones, I'm not just talking about dreaming them, but when I've had encounters with angels, their clothes will be a part of them. It's something about them. They look very human, but their clothes are, as much as they are that person, their clothes are a part of them, if that makes sense. But these men sitting there caught my attention, and they were sitting on each side. And one of the man to the right that was being close to the way Trump kind of had leaning like he was going to fall, that man looked at me and motioned me to come. You know, he made a gesture for me to come. When I got to him, that man kind of made me stand behind the brother. He kind of like showed me, wasn't speaking, just like, you know, stand here behind him. So I got behind him and was kind of holding him up, and I had my hands on his back. And in this dream, I knew I was dreaming. I was aware of this. And I'll teach about dreams later anyway, it doesn't matter. But these two men, they began to, first thing they did, they undone his tie. Trump had on a tie, and they began to undo his tie. And I watched them, you know, later, they undid his tie, and they undone it from him. And then I watched them begin to unbutton his shirt. They began to go down, and they unbuttoned his shirt because he was sweating, like he was very hot. And then they just pulled his shirt off. They got on each side, they pulled his shirt off. And the Lord spoke to me immediately and said, I am untying everything that's trying to choke his voice. And that's the tie coming off. The Lord said, I am untying everything that's trying to choke his voice. And as they were taking his shirt off, as his shirt, and they just pulled it off of him, I heard the Lord say to me again, in my spirit, I didn't see the Lord, but I heard him say, I'm using this crisis to strip him. I'm using this crisis to strip him, that he will find me, and he will find the Christ in this crisis. I'm going to read that to you again. I wrote it out here, and I don't want to blunder my words. I don't want to have this on record the first time I tell it, very matter of fact. But the Lord said, when the tie come off, he said, I am removing everything, I'm untying everything that's trying to choke him. And then when his shirt had come all the way off, he said, I'm using this crisis to strip him, that he might find me, the Christ, in the crisis. And somebody come up, one of the men had it, they took an oxygen mask, you have these kind of cover, and they put the thing behind his neck, and I'm still standing behind him with my hands on his shoulders, his back, and they put this oxygen mask up on him, and this is very strange, but, you know, without interpreting too much, I noticed that out what would be the audience, you know, here on the stage, this oxygen mask, it went into 1,000 direct, it wasn't going into a respirator or just an air pump. It was going into trees. It were all these trees. There were just trees everywhere. And that thing come out of his mouth, and I noticed it just, the line just spliced, and it was going into, you know, thousands, it appeared to be, into these trees. And the Bible to the planting of the Lord. And nevertheless, I felt the Lord saying, these trees are the intercessors who are interceding for this man who is about to get his second wind. And this thing, he's breathing, and I mean, he's gasping for air. He's gasping. But the Lord said, and I'm hearing this in my spirit in the dream, he said, but he's become as weak as any other man. And until he himself and the intercessors begin to pray, he cannot get this second wind. So I'm standing behind him. I'm kind of holding him up. And let me say this. Me being in the dream doesn't mean anything. And I learned this from a prophet that I really admire, who said that when he himself is in a dream, a person has a dream about him in it, it represents what he represents. And I feel like me being in it is nothing about me, nothing about Robin. It represented my ministry, my kind of ministry, my faith. It represented you. It represented people that are looking for a word from the Lord, not just, what the government says, but nevertheless, I believe that me being in the dream represented the church, the remnant, praying people. And these two men, when I was standing there kind of holding up, these two men, one of them that kept directing me, the one on the right, but he said, come with us. Come with us. And mostly what he was saying, he was just doing it with gestures, and I was knowing what he meant, but he did speak to me, so I'm going to tell you what he said. He said, hurry up and come with us. Well, I was thinking, I need to stay here. He said, come with us. So off I go, and it was, how a dream can be. I don't even remember my steps, but suddenly they led me into a room. It was a dining room, tables spread out, long dining room, and they said to me, you need to hurry up and set this table. Set this table. So I turned around, I began to pick up placemats, and I noticed where every chair was, I put placemats in every chair I was putting, and I remember thinking it was kind of a country looking style table. It wasn't super fancy, but it was big, and I was just setting silverware down, and I remember thinking, I hope I know what I'm doing, put everything on the right side. But I set the table, and as I began to set the table, begin to set the silverware, I set napkins out, everything. Immediately as I finished, the door opened. And when the door opened, these people come walking in, and they walked Trump in. And when he walked in, he looked totally different than me. He looked different than what I've seen out there on that stage where he looked, terrible. But I actually pulled his chair out. I knew where he was coming at the end of the table, and I kind of backed up. He never acknowledged me. It was like he was oblivious to me. But I pulled the chair out, and he sat down. And as he was being seated at that time, for some reason, I just looked back down the table because I just finished, and I counted how many placemats it was. I counted, and there were 44. There were 44 that I'd set them on each side. There were 22 on this side, 22 on that side, and where he sat down would have been the 45th placemat. That was the 45. And at the other end of the table, I looked down, and I had set one. There was two ends of the table, 22 on each side. His would have been 45. There was the 46 placemat down at the end. And one of those men, that man that kept directing me, telling me what to do, he walked down to the end of that table, straight across from Trump, and he picked that placemat up. He picked it up, everything that I put there, he took it up, and he looked at me in a way like, this authority, because he had been telling me he would do this, like come, he was just pointing me around what to do. And this is what he spoke. I want to read this so I get it right the first time I tell it. He picked up all that, and he said, do not set the table for 46. And he said, and you tell your people not to refer to this place as the 46th. It is not a sign, but your people are attempting to make a place for the 46th. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you this part right now. We have people, we have Christians that are going along with what is happening right now and saying things like president-elect. And what you're going to do, and don't call me a false prophet if it don't happen. I'm telling you what God wants to do, but what you're doing when you do that, you're continuing with the will of God. And that angel, if that in fact was an angel, could have been one of the cloud witnesses. I'm just saying, this supernatural man looked at me. He looked at me authoritatively, picked that stuff, because I said it. You know, I said every seat, 46 seats. And I didn't even count them until Trump come in. And then we got an extra seat there. He picked it up and read it again. He said, do not set the table for the 46 TH. He said, and you tell your people not to refer to the 46. It is not a sign. That means heaven has not assigned that, but you're trying to make something happen that God doesn't want to happen. But he said, your people, now, believe me, folks, I don't want to do none of this no more. But I get beat up enough. But the Lord, I feel like, sent me to tell you, look in this camera and tell you, you need to quit saying Biden's administration and what he's going to be, and the president-elect, quit saying when he gets in, he's going to, I'm telling you what this angel told me. He told me to tell you, if you're God's people, tell them that it's not a sign, and your people need to stop attempting to make a place for it. The 46 is not a sign. And when they took the silverware up, they took the placemat up, and I noticed when they picked that placemat up, I didn't notice this at first, but when he picked it up, I'm the one that put it there. And it's kind of like God saying, if your people and you don't straighten up, you're going to get something that I never mandated, I never ordained. You can get something God doesn't want to give you, folks. What prophecy is the promise and the potential of the will of God. But you can reject it through fear, disobedience, doubt, and unbelief, which is what Christians are doing. A lot of apostolic Christians are doing. It's a shame. Let me just say this and I'll finish. It's a shame that people who are not apostolic, I stood with them in Washington, D.C. They prayed, spoke in tongues, and prophesied, and cried, and interceded while we were over here, doing our stuff. Like got our head in the sand. So the Lord, through that angel, told me, it's not a sign. You tell your people not to refer to the 46. And when he picked it up, it had a 46 on the bottom of that placement. And he picked it up. Kind of like we put it down. What you buy is what you buy. But what you loose on earth is what you get from heaven. And he picked it up and looked at me like, you do not put that down. And I saw these people standing around that end of the table, like a little entourage around that end of the table. And they became infuriated. When that angel picked that up, the devil come out in these people's eyes. And I really couldn't make them out that it was anybody that I knew, but I just knew that they were a part of this faith administration. And I saw these people, when they got so mad, they began to shout, they began to scream, and they began to say to me, they looked across that table to me and to others, they said, why are you taking his place? Why did you take his place? Why are you, I put it there, that angel took it, and they were holler screaming. And they said, why did you prepare his place, and now you're taking it back? I was like, man, the angel got on to me, and now these people getting on to me. I'm just like I was in school. I'm in trouble no matter what I do. And so they said, I'm going to say it again, they said, why did you prepare him a place, and now you're taking it back? And so they began shouting and saying, this is what they were saying when they were going out. And tell you what they did, they kept saying, we're not going to go away. We're not going to go away. They said, you're going to put that place back. You're going to put 46 back. And they went into this room right around. It's like a window there. I could see through this window. And I saw TV cameras and crews, and they all had their cameras and everything toward. They went in this room, and there was a chair in that room, and over that chair, like this, up here, there was like a seal thing, and it had that number 46 in it. It said the 46 on the wall. It said the 46. And that crew that was in there, that was whatever they were doing there, I could see through this window, they kept coming back out of the room and disrupting us, and they kept saying, we're not going to broadcast anything y'all do. They said, we're not going to televise anything y'all do in here. And they were upset. They kept coming back because they couldn't get, I remember saying, why can't we get any light in here? And they were trying to get light, like to film something. And listen to it. There was a darkness in that room that could not be brightened up. There was a darkness, and they kept, and at one point I remember them saying, it's the breakers, like this, a breaker box. They kept losing power, and the electricity kept going out, and they kept putting lights, and like these lights we have, they kept trying to put, and they couldn't get it to brighten up, and they kept coming out blaming us. They kept saying, we're only going to acknowledge 46. We don't acknowledge this. And I know what that is. I know you know what that is. And suddenly, the door that we come in, Trump come in. That door opened. Now pay attention to this and don't forget. That door opened again, and when it opened up this time, these men walked in that were dressed in like military, like generals. They looked like, I'm just going to say, they looked like generals to me. They were not police. They were military, but they were like, you know what a general looks like? How they have the badges, and they have the decorations here, and they have the rank on their sleeve and everything. You know, I'm not in the military. I mean, God's talking about. You guys in the military know what I'm talking about. They come in like that, and when they walked in, they come in with authority. I mean, I knew authority come in. And they said to these people in that room, they said, you've caused enough damage here, you're under arrest. They said, you're under arrest. And here's what they said, by orders from the courts of heaven. I told you, when your eyes get on the Supreme Court, the court of heaven's going to get involved. And I watched them again. I didn't see anybody. I'm not saying Biden. I'm just telling what the dream was. I saw them begin arresting people, and they began taking these people out one by one. They were cussing, and they were screaming. And Trump has never said a word. He's just sitting at the table. And one of those men looked at me and motioned me to go out. He motioned me like, when this started happening, he's like, go. That same man. He like said, go, like you're out of here. So I was on my way out. This is that last one. I'm on my way to go out, and I'm watching all this happen, like, people being arrested, like they're getting this problem, getting this taken care of. And right as I was walking out the door, I heard Trump sitting in that chair, in that place. He said, before we eat this meal, he said, let's pray. He said, because if it wasn't me for the grace of God, I wouldn't be sitting here like that. And he said, it's a miracle from God that I can be in this place. Folks, immediately after the Lord began to give an interpretation and showed me a lot of this, and I'm going to teach you about dreams later, I had to pull it out because I had the dream, and I had to go back and try to figure out. But nevertheless, the Lord spoke to me, and this is where I'm going to end tonight. The Lord spoke to me. He said, go to Isaiah 45. Isaiah 45. Those of you that are familiar, if you're not familiar, you need to go look at, does that say 590 people on here? Somebody call somebody and tell them to get on there so it can be 600 people. The Lord spoke to me, and he said, go to Isaiah chapter 45. Now, those of you that are familiar, you know that Trump has been seen as Cyrus. And I'm not going to get into all that, but Isaiah 45, there it went. We just hit 602. And 602, when I just called it, is 8. 602 is 8. But Isaiah chapter 45 speaks of Cyrus, but listen at what it says. And hear it well. Thus saith the Lord unto his anointed Cyrus, who by the way is pagan. And God anointed pagan king for his will. So don't tell me he won't. The Lord said unto his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden to subdue nations before him. I will loose the loins of kings to open before him the 2 lead gates. And the gates shall not be shut. This is what you need to be praying every day, folks. Because I've done told you, prophecy ain't enough. My dream is not enough. I'm showing you what's going to happen. We got to pick up the place now. But watch what he said, it shall not be shut. That there's something that's going to try to shut. Two gates, 2 terminals. And I will go before thee and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass and cut asunder the bars of iron. I will give thee the treasures of darkness. So that's a key word. When I read that, I knew why God sent me back to the scripture, because I didn't pick that up. Then people were in a dark room that could not be lit. They were trying to get light, they couldn't get it. He said, I will give thee the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places, that thou mightest know that I, the Lord, which called thee by name, am the God of Israel. And here is the key. This is the key, ladies and gentlemen. For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect. This is why God's doing it. I have even called thee by name. I have surnamed thee. Thou hast not known me. Now listen to me. That's why God called Trump. The same reason he called Cyrus. He said, not for any other reason but this, but for Jacob my servant's sake and for Israel's sake. I put you here to be a bodyguard and take care of Israel. And if you'll do that, I'll open up the 2 lead gates. And you have not known me. No, he ain't known me. But he said, I am the Lord and there is none else. There is no God beside me. I girded thee and thou hast not known me. And that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is none beside me. I am the Lord and there is none else. I form light and I create darkness. I make peace and I create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And it stayed on 602 the whole time I give that prophecy right there from that scripture. And that's 8. Because why? That's a new beginning coming for the land of Israel and for the people of the living God. And the Lord sent me to tell you. And I'm going to say this to you and pray for you and let you get out of here. And you need to go back and rewatch this and evaluate, pay very close attention to all of the things that I've said tonight. But hear me and hear me well. Quit setting the table for something God didn't ordain. I want you to go tell. You need to post this. There's 602 of y'all. You need to go post this all over Facebook world. If you put Trump's name and Biden's name, you will get blocked. You can't go put that. Go put exactly what I'm going to tell you. Say, church, stop setting the table for things God didn't ordain. God didn't ordain a 46, but if you set the table, he's going to come sit down. And what I'm telling you is, we're in a war right now. The war ain't with evil. The war is among ourselves, because we got Christians who are supposed to be conservative Christians, praying Christians, apostolic Christians, full gospel, spirit-filled Christians who are setting the table for something God didn't ordain. And that angel looked at me, took what I did, as if to say, you get it, your whole people are doing it. Tell them not to set the table. The 46 has not been appointed. Oh my God, have mercy, folks. Let's raise our hands just as high as we can to the Lord right now. Wherever you're at, wherever you're listening from, just raise your hands to God right now. We're going to love him for a moment. We're going to love him. I'm going to pray for him. We're going to